Hello and welcome to Faithfully Stampin' with Jennifer Helm. I am Jennifer Helm, the Faithful Stamper, independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! Today I have for you a tri-fold shutter card. I had a request by one of my stamping friends to make this card. She sent me a picture and I really thought it was going to be a lot more complicated than it is, but it's a really cool fun fold. When you open it up, the card will stand on its own. It's really a display piece. And it's really not all that complicated to make. I know you're probably looking at it thinking, whoa, I don't know about that, but I promise you it's really not that difficult. So if you want to have a snapshot, you want to take a screenshot with your camera, here's the supply list. I know it says Mystery Monday, but I made this on my Mystery Monday on my Facebook Live over on my Facebook channel. But this has all the dimensions you need, so if you want to take a screenshot or pause and write something down, I'll go over the measurements again later, but I want you to have that. And there is a template that I will try to remember to show you at the end of the video as well that you can screenshot. So what I love about this card is it's not as complicated as it looks, and it also only needs an 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock, not anything longer. Some of them require a 12 by 12. And I really like that I don't need a large piece of cardstock. I don't often carry that, so I'm primarily using 8.5 by 11. So you're going to want to cut it down to 5.5 by 10.5. And you will need a paper trimmer scorer for this. We're going to cut 2 times and score 4 times, and that's going to give us the basis for the card. So what you want to do is bring over your paper trimmer scorer, and we're going to put the 5.5 inch section at the top. And you're going to slide it into your paper trimmer to the 1 1/4 mark. Now, I'm going to hold this up with my finger for a minute because I'm not cutting end to end on the cardstock. I'm actually cutting slits in the middle. So I'm going to slide my cutting blade up. And I need to cut from 1 3/4 inches down to 8 3/4. And I'll cut the first one, and then I'm going to show you from a different angle to make it a little easier. So before I get started here, this paper trimmer is great because there are measure marks here on the side of this cutting arm. So that's what I'm using to start at 1 3/4 and cut down to 8 3/4. Otherwise, I'd probably need a pencil and a ruler. This is slightly easier when you're not trying to hit your head on your camera stand. So I've got my cutting blade now lined up at 1 3/4, and my paper is where I want it to be, so I need to slide it all the way down to 8 3/4, which I know you probably can't see. So I'm going to turn my trimmer for the second one, but I'm going to lift up. Now I have this slit in my card, you can see. I'm going to turn the paper 180 and line it up again at 1 1/4. And I'll slide my blade back up. I'm going to turn it sideways so you can hopefully see a little better what I'm doing. So 1 1/4. It's odd for me to be cutting this way, but. And then 1 3/4. Down to 8 3/4. So hopefully that just gives you a better visual for what I was doing there. And so you should have 2 parallel cuts, like so. Now, put your cutting blade away, and I need to pull out the extendable arm for this portion. We're going to do 4 score lines. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to score between the lines on the 2 ends, and then do 2 score lines all the way across in the middle. So first up, we're going to put the paper in on the 10.5 inch side at 1 3/4, and this one we're just scoring between the lines. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before and use the side hash mark on my blade to just go up to my cut line and press down there. And then I've got the score line between my cut lines. Now slide down to 3.5 inches, and you're going to score all the way across. slide down to 7.5, or nope, I'm sorry, 7. Slide all the way across your paper again, and then slide down one more time to 8 3/4, and using the hash mark on the left side of your scoring blade, score just between the lines. Okay, and there is all the cutting and scoring we need to do for the card. Now before we do anything else, I'm going to glue my paper on. It's a lot easier to glue your paper on while the cardstock is flat, as opposed to once you've already folded the card and then you've got to work with all these angles. So I used our Peach DSP, and I have 5 different coordinating prints. If you don't have 5 different coordinating prints, it's okay. I'll show you a sample where I only used a couple. But these are going to be on our outside pieces, what I call panel A, which are 1.5 inches wide by 5 1/4 inches tall. And regular adhesive is fine for adhering these. You don't need anything special. Doesn't matter really which end you start with. Give yourself a little bit of a border, but around the edge, and you're putting it between the score line and the edge of the card. And I'm just using my Stampin' Seal. Let's see. So same thing on this side, a little bit of a border. And there's panel A. And the A's and the B's will make more sense once I get the template up that I'll show you at the end. Now, these are panel B. These are 1.5 inches wide by 1 inch tall, and these are going to go in the small squares here at the top and the bottom. Now, if you want, when you make your own, you can lay all your cut pieces on the card at one time, and then you can glue them left to right and match up your edges so you get a nice straight line all the way across. I'm gonna kind of cross my fingers and pray that I can get it fairly lined up since I'm doing it this way. But this way you're not watching me lay the paper down and then glue it, because I know this is probably as exciting as watching paint dry. But I promise the outcome is worth it in the end. All right, so there's panel B. That's the only one you need 4 of. Panel C, you need 2. This is 1.5 inches wide by 2 3/4 inches. They're going to go here. Now, if you've got directional paper, make sure you are putting it right way up. Also, check that when we get to the sentiment piece on the back, because I almost glued my sentiment on upside down, which would have meant my flowers were hanging from the ceiling. So just keep that in mind. You can use directional paper, just make sure you're gluing it and any other corresponding pieces correctly. All right, almost there. Panel D goes at the top and bottom. 3 1/4 inches wide by 1 inch tall. So these will go here. And then we have the focal point of the card, which goes in the center, and that is panel E. And that is 3 1/4 inches wide by 2 3/4 inches tall. So that is all the paper that we are putting on the front of the card. Now, if you want, what you can do, and I'll show you the template while I'm talking, in case you want to take a screenshot of this as well, and I do have this posted over on my Facebook page, and I color-coded everything, so hopefully you can read it. But if you want, instead of using the Designer Series paper, you can cut all the pieces in cardstock first, and then shorten the measurements and do a layer of designer series paper. So basically you're matting your designer series paper. I'll show you a sample in a minute so you know what I'm talking about. Now what we're going to do is flip this over. You need a panel of basic white, which is the same size as your panel E. So 3 1/4 inches wide by 2 3/4 inches tall. It's going to go right here in the center, and we want to put our sentiment on it. So I'm going to grab my stamps and ink. I am using the Love and Happiness set for my sentiments tonight. And then my Sweet as a Peach set for my accent. Now, my accent stamp is photopolymer, so I need my mat for that. I don't really need it for the red rubber stamp, but it doesn't hurt anything. So I have Balmy Blue ink. Tap gently. I think that's okay. Might be a smidge crooked, but not too bad. And let's see, I'm going to put that away. Calypso Coral for my accent stamp. Like that. Since I have that out, I'm going to stamp my envelope corner because I like a little accent. I don't like plain envelopes. I want somebody to say, ooh, that's going to be pretty when they open the card. And then last but not least, a sentiment for the front while we're here. So I have Night of Navy. I just wanted this to show up nice and strong on the front. And this is our anniversary sentiment. And this is a die cut from our Tasteful Labels die set. It's a variety of labels in different shapes that is very, very handy to have if you have a die cut and emboss machine. All right. So now I'm going to bring my card front back over. I'm going to make sure my flowers are going the right direction and flip that over before I attach my sentiment to it with my very sticky adhesive. All right, there we go. Now, the fun part, the fold. And I think I figured out how to do this while I was on my Facebook Live. So here's a tip for you. Your instinct when you fold the card is you're going to want to bend it here between these two pieces of paper. And that's not where it's going to fold, but I know when I first did my very first one of these, I've got crease lines because that's what I wanted to do. So here's what I found to be easier. We are going to talk about mountain and valley folds, but I found it easiest to take my fingers and put them right next to the score line here and fold up on the outer portion, but we're going to pop a mountain fold here like this. So we're basically valley folding these back pieces and mountain folding the middle, and then as we close it, we're valley folding this end and mountain folding this end. So once you crease it a little bit, and then if you hold here like I said and start to fold, it will come together easier and you won't have those accidental crease lines. And if the card may stick a little bit, it's okay. It'll open right up, and there you go. So you've kind of got two different Z folds going on just in opposite directions, and that's the only thing that makes folding the card tricky. But if you use that little tip that I figured out to hold it here with your fingers and then work, it actually makes things a little simpler. I wish I'd known that when I did all my other samples. Now to finish this card, I'm going to take my little die cut shape here and add a couple of dimensionals, only to the left side, because I don't want to accidentally glue my card shut. So I used mini dimensionals. I probably could have used a couple larger ones, but that's okay. And so I'm going to position this here, and I can double check. Ooh, it was pretty close, but I didn't get my dimensional too far out there. There's my anniversary card, and so when the card is folded it looks nice, but then it also has the pretty design when you close or open the card. I really wanted to have some sentiment here, but I realized when I closed the card it was half covered up, so I'll show you how I got around that in a little bit, but I found it easiest to put my sentiment piece here on this panel. Now just to jazz it up a smidge, we're going to add a couple of rhinestones, and then this card is going to be done. So I just am going to add a couple of our basic rhinestone basic jewels here to the card. And there it's done. So, a beautiful showpiece that someone could have standing on their desk or their mantle with room to write their message on the back. All right, so more samples to show you. And you'll see a theme with anniversary and weddings here. This is the card I referred to with the panels of cardstock layered with the designer series paper. Just a different shape here on the front. Again, watching where I put those dimensionals. And there's the back. And of course I accented the envelope with the little heart that I added to the back sentiment piece. Now I mentioned that you don't have to use 5 different pieces of designer series paper. This is a similar card to the other one, different prints of designer series paper from the same pack with a little added bling on this one. And this was kind of a happy accident because I realized I wanted to have a different print in the middle, but when I was distracted a little while I was working, and I accidentally cut the same print for these 2 pieces, or 3 pieces, the 2 panels. So, but I realized it wasn't really a big deal. And so I could have even done all 3 of these in the same color. They are the same color, but they're 2 different prints, so they could have been all the same print. But you can play around and decide what works best for you. Sometimes you can't get 5 pieces of paper in a pack that go together. All right, so next up, this one is a little bit different. Switches paper to our Blessing of Home suite. And what I did was I used a punch. This is our heart pack punch to create this here. And this is glued with dimensionals, like you saw me do with the sentiment piece. But when I open it up, I layered another one inside flat on the card. So you can see this, but because there's not words, it still looks good when I close the card, but beautiful when I open it too. And since my designer series paper was light colored, I could stamp on it here to add to my message. So that wouldn't work with a really busy paper, but if you've got the right color paper and ink, you can make that work. So I couldn't decide which of these was my favorite because I was rather tickled with them all. It took me longer to pick out paper. Then once I did one card, the rest of them all went together very quickly because it was just cutting, and then I had the knack for the cutting and scoring. So I promise you, once you get the hang of it, you won't want to stop. And then last but not least, this is a wedding card instead of an anniversary card. And I used that same heart pack punch. Now I really wanted to put my wedding wishes greeting here, but I ran out of space. I couldn't fit it in and have everything look right. So if you have a small enough sentiment, I could have worked that in there and then it would have been hidden behind the 2 hearts, but as it was, I stamped it and then cut it out with one of our rectangle stitch dies and put it up there at the top. I love this paper because it all has the glimmer of gold in it. And there is our sentiment for the wedding card on the back. And my envelope to go with it, I brought in some of that paper for my envelope flap. And I pulled out that gold with the gold glimmer, and I embossed the hearts before I attached them to the card once I punched them out. So lots of options you have for this card. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this tri-fold shutter card. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you don't have a demonstrator you're currently working with and you need some of the supplies you saw tonight, you can check me out on the web at thefaithfulstamper.stampinup.net. You can also find me on Facebook as The Faithful Stamper, and I go live twice a week, typically, and you can follow me there for other project ideas and a picture of that template I showed you earlier. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy crafting.